Hey everybody, Sel from Seljoy here, and I'm here with another video, and today we want to talk about some of the things that are missing from Logic Pro for the iPad Pro. So there are some very close similarities, but in Apple-like fashion, they've given us something that we love to use, but it's really missing some things that we would love to be included. Now, will those things come in a later update? Some of them probably will, but for today, I just want to maybe feature a song that I've been working on for a while that I started on my desktop, and I'll give you a preview of what that looks and sounds like. And then I'm going to port that over to my iPad and see how many plugins or features may be missing from there. And we'll discuss a list that I compiled of things that are missing from the iPad iteration of Logic Pro. Let's take a look at it. Okay, so here's my session that's in Logic Pro and on the desktop. And I'm just gonna zoom in here. We can see we have a lot of tracks happening. I haven't really created a lot of track stacks or anything like that. So these are just tracks that are open. I've got vocals, I've got instruments. It goes deep. It goes deep. So some of these empty areas, there are track stacks specifically for those vocals there. So as you can see, this is a pretty large session that, in theory, can be ported over to Logic Pro. Okay, and then I also have a secondary display where I have my mixer view on a separate monitor. Okay, sometimes I like to watch what's happening in the mix while everything is playing back, and I can be making some tweaks as I'm going. All right, so I'm just going to play a few bars of this track for you. All right, so I've got a lot of things going on in here. We've got live drums here in this particular stack. We've got some verse vocals going on here. We've got some chorus stuff that's muted for obvious reasons. Still working on this track. In order for me to port this over successfully to Logic Pro for the iPad, I have to bounce down the audio on these tracks so that I will make sure I will be able to do something with that audio on the iPad. So first things first, go through to see if there are any third-party plugins that can be bounced in place. So what you're going to do is take those regions and you're going to transform them into audio that will still have your effects plugins on there, but the MIDI information is no longer pushing those MIDI notes through your software synth. That will now become audio that you can EQ and add other audio effects to later on. So that's the first thing I'm going to want to do, is just go through all of this to see if there's any areas that I want to replace software synth tracks with audio tracks. I'm also going to leave some of the sampler drum instruments, like I have a 606 hat, 808 snare. Let's see what stays there. And I also have some instruments that I sampled myself. Now these are sampled in from some other drum libraries that I had, and I sampled them into Logic. You know what, to be on the safe side, because they're not stock, there's something that I created, I'm going to go ahead and bounce those in place But as I'm bouncing these in place, I'm leaving the original tracks there with the third-party plugins still in the session. And I'm anticipating that once I load this up in the iPad Pro, I'm going to get a whole lot of messages. This plugin's not available, that plugin's not available, and this is not going to load, that's not going to load. So I'm already anticipating that, but I want to make sure that anything that I sampled in myself from these tracks will be there. So I'm just taking the time to do this so that you guys can see it. Okay, I think we're ready. And so I'm now going to save this. Now, some of you who are old legacy Logic users are used to saving files as a project folder. So you will have the option to save this as a project folder or as a package file. Now, when working in Logic Pro for iPad Pro, you may want to save this as a package file. What that does, it'll condense everything down to one Logic Pro file so that you can just tap on that and it will begin to access all of the other files that are nested into that project file. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and save this in my iCloud's Drive folder. So I'm gonna go to iCloud Drive, and I have a shared folder here that I'm gonna access and just share it in there. Now, for good measure, I'm gonna include in this package file all my Apple Sound Library content and also Space Designer settings. Okay, one of the other ways to transfer your files, if it's a large session, you can go ahead and pull it from the file location on your Finder window and drag it over to the AirDrop option in your sidebar in Finder. Drag it over to the AirDrop option and then select your device. And that's one of the beautiful things about working within the Apple ecosystem, is that you can transfer files wirelessly between devices. All right, so here we are. We have our session ported over from the desktop over to the iPad. And now we're gonna open it up and see if we can actually get this session loaded here and maybe get to play something. Let's have a look. This might take a minute, y'all. Okay, so this is interesting. We see right off the bat that the app is telling us that there are some files that are missing from this session. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit OK. And it's going to tell me which of my third-party plugins are not available, like my Waves L1, L3, Stylus. All right, that's okay. So let's see if we still have our tracks. All right, let's see if my markers are there. Your markers are located right here. Yep, all my markers are there. That's a good thing. All right, so the song map is there. The tempo seems to be there. Let's see if we've got some audio. Let's see if we can play it. Okay, so I am excited that this audio came over from my desktop over to Logic on the iPad and seems to be working just fine. I'm not really using up a whole lot of CPU. Happy to see that. So now this gives me an opportunity to leverage some of the plugins that are on my iPad that I don't have on my desktop. Some of my favorite software synths. I'm going to do another video just to go over those. I have a palette of stuff I use on my desktop and laptop, and then I have a palette of stuff that I would use on the iPad. So You guys will get a chance to hear what that sounds like and check it out for yourself. Maybe create palettes of your own, depending on what device you're on. Until the worlds come together and collide a little bit more smoothly, this is the experience, but it does give us a workable way to start on one device, finish on another, bounce things down to audio, move back and forth, which is, of course, the vision for this. So, pretty cool. There are some things that are missing, and I'm going to give you my list of things that are missing from the iPad version of Logic Pro. Logic Drummer. It's one of those plugins and features within Logic Pro that allows you to sync a virtual drummer to one of your tracks. Now, in Logic on the desktop, you can actually have that drummer follow any one of the other tracks, whether it's a MIDI track or an audio track. And I'm seeing some slight implementations of that in the iPad version as well. However, when you are using Logic Drummer, there's a key part to editing how the drummer plays. And this is where you have the option to adjust the way the drummer plays. Do you want them to pull their strokes or pull the groove a little bit so that it's a little bit behind the click? Or do you want to push it so that the drummer is playing a little bit ahead of the tempo? And also adjusting the ghost notes and things like that. These are implementations that you will find in the desktop version that are not currently in the iPad. Secondly, we have the score editor. And for those who would like to export their compositions to notation form or maybe print out some sheet music or create PDFs for their sheet music, currently there isn't a way to do this in the iPad Pro version that we have as of the date of this recording. We hope that they're going to be adding that later on. Next is the MIDI event window, which allows you to do some more fine-tuning for your MIDI instruments or your software synths, like editing certain aspects of the recorded information that you can't quite get to in the piano roll. As you can see on my screen, I have the piano roll here at the bottom, which is showing the notes that are being articulated. But over to the right-hand side, I have a MIDI window that allows me to isolate a particular track. Let's say you've got a MIDI note that's extended too long, or a sustain pedal event, or an expression pedal event that's just a little bit too long and you want to be able to adjust those parameters. You can do that right here in this window. So that currently is not available in the iPad Pro version that we have today. Now, I have seen how they've attempted to consolidate some functionality into the inspector window, but there's only so much that you can cram in there. Now, the ability to connect multiple audio interfaces to your Mac has been a killer feature that most people don't know about. It's called creating an aggregate audio device within your Mac. You can create this aggregate device by accessing the Audio MIDI utility program on your Mac. Then go ahead and bring up the Audio Devices window. This will allow you to see all of the audio interfaces that are connected to your device via USB. And then from here, you can create a new aggregate device and select all of the different audio interfaces that you would like to combine into one aggregate device. Then this allows you to access more channels for recording. This is a great feature for Macs, but it's not currently available on the iOS platform. The next thing I would love to see them add in Logic Pro for the iPad is the ability to add video. We would love for them to add some videos so that we could work on our movie scores and begin to compose things on Logic Pro for the iPad Pro. There are a number of orchestral sounds in there that we can leverage, and also some great synthesizer sounds using the Alchemy plugin. It would be awesome to be able to do some film score compositions on this new multi-touch interface. The next thing I would love for them to add would be the flex pitch option. Now, flex time is something that we've had access to on the Mac for some years now, and when they added the ability to do some Melodyne style editing right within the flex tools, or the flex set of tools, that was a bonus that many of us enjoy using. Now they've added a lot of those flex time tools right here in the iPad. However, they have not ported over the pitch option yet. This is something I would love to see them add. I would love to see Apple add the quick swipe comping feature to the take folders area of the arrange window in Logic Pro for the iPad. So we currently have the ability to record multiple takes for our tracks, whether it's MIDI or whether it's audio. And then we can select the best take that we have so that we can use the best performance in our track. We also have the ability in the iPad to do track alternatives. So you can be practicing the parts for your track while the recording feature has not been enabled, but Logic is still keeping track of your looped sections and what you've been playing. And if you were to press stop and then select the track alternative option, it's been tracking all of the information that you've been playing this entire time. And it's a beautiful feature that will allow you to access those takes and maybe use them in your track. We currently have that in the iPad, but the killer option would be the ability to quick swipe through those takes to create a nice comp, taking the best sections of your performance and utilizing them in your track. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about was the conversation around spatial audio. So about 2 months ago, I posted one of the first questions about spatial audio on the Apple message boards upon hearing the announcement of Logic Pro for the iPad Pro. Now, this was important because Apple has a new standard now for new playlisted songs on their Apple Music streaming service. And songs that don't meet the new Dolby Atmos or spatial audio format might not be eligible for playlisting on their streaming service. Now, we should all know that Apple has the largest streaming service available, and that getting your songs playlisted with other well-known artists' songs is the best way to get your songs noticed and start to generate some streaming income. And if you have an older legacy Mac that's still kicking, still running, still cranking out sessions, chances are you're running an older version of Mac OS and an older version of Logic Pro that can't get the new updates that will enable you to add the spatial audio plugin to your master bus. So in order to get the spatial audio mixing, you've got a few options for your Mac. Number one, you either purchase a new Mac so that you can get the updated software and the files and the spatial audio plugin in your newer version of Logic. Or number two, you can hack your existing Mac that has the specs but doesn't have the files. So let's say you've maxed out your RAM, you've updated your hard drive to a solid state drive, you've made other improvements on your Mac, but now you just need to be able to get the newer operating systems. There are websites that will offer a software patch to install on your older Mac so that you can now upgrade to the newer Mac OS operating systems and get the new files. Now, you need to be careful. If you're going to do this, you should know that this could create some software hardware compatibility issues, as Apple's software releases are optimized for the supported hardware that they're selling. So the last thing you want to do is for something like your Wi-Fi or another essential part of your Mac to stop working because you're now installing software that doesn't work with the hardware in your legacy Mac. Now, on this subject of spatial audio, I really feel like the iPad Pro version of Logic Pro can be the solution for users who have a legacy Mac, because the iPad already has spatial audio baked in to the iOS operating system. How do we know this? We use spatial audio for our AirPod Pros and our AirPod Maxes. So how hard would it be for Apple to port over their spatial audio plugin over to the iPad in Logic Pro? I think it's doable. This would allow users to mix using AirPods, which would be the very same devices that many of their customers would already be streaming new music right on those devices. And it will become a great audio reference for content creators. This would also allow legacy Mac users to bounce down their audio, open it up in the iPad version of Logic Pro, and finish up there and mix in the spatial audio format. Okay, so I've covered a lot of stuff here that I would love to see in the newer version of the iPad Pro version of Logic Pro. But here's some of my final thoughts. Apple has proved time and time again that it can take its stock plugins and capabilities from the Mac and run them smoothly and efficiently on an iPad, leveraging the power of something as old as an A12 Bionic chip from 2018 and even the more recent Apple Silicon chips like the M1 or the M2 series. Perhaps the only barrier to unleashing some of the full capabilities of Logic on the iPad is perhaps the iPad's killer feature, which is multi-touch. But figuring out the smartest way and the simplest way to implement something like a quick swipe comp using multi-touch could be tricky. And maybe that's the reason why we don't have some of the features already loaded. They have to figure out how to complete the commands using multi-touch. But I believe multi-touch can really be the secret sauce to taking the music creation technology forward, unleashing countless new ways to create music. One of the things that I hope is that Apple isn't going to limit the iPad platform too much as it has in the past, so that it doesn't compete with the Mac platform. And I've long been an advocate that the iPad is ready for prime time in the music and film creation fields and shouldn't be relegated to just a sidekick. Okay? Hashtag free the iPad. Okay, that's enough of my rant. What features haven't we talked about yet that you would like to see on the iPad version of Logic Pro? I want you to go ahead and leave me a comment. If this channel is helpful to you in any way, go ahead and leave me a like, and also please subscribe so that I can continue to bring some more videos to you as we're all growing together in this community of creators, prosumers, and just an amazing community of people. Thank you so much for all of your comments and encouragement so far. I look forward to bringing you another video. Take care.